Hi, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, and I represent the 12th Congressional District in New Jersey. I am sitting here with the Deputy Commissioner within the Department of Human Services, who is going to, his name is Michael Wilson, and he's going to share with you his portfolio, because we're going to talk about certain aspects of that portfolio and how they're being impacted by the shutdown and even by the change in administration since January of this year. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to really sit down and talk to you, because we tried last week and we weren't successful in connecting. Tell me a little bit about your portfolio in the Department of Human Services.
Well, first I want to thank you for the opportunity to try to connect again. I know it didn't work last week, but I want to be committed that we would be able to communicate to people. And I really want to thank you for sharing the information so that people all across your district and across our state have a sense of the challenges that we are facing, and they are serious.
I think it's very serious that we spend time informing and educating as much as possible, because people kind of go through their lives and something, then they hit a bump and they're not quite sure why. So I try very hard to keep the folks that I represent informed as to what that bump is all about.
Thank you very much. So in my portfolio, we have the Division of Family Development, which has SNAP, which we're going to spend a lot of time on today, but it also has TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and also the Child Care Program for the state of New Jersey. In addition, I have the Office of New Americans, which deals with the immigration-related functions within the state and the refugee resettlement programs. And then finally, the Office of Emergency Management for emergencies that are related to human services here in the state. So the SNAP program is critically a very important program, not just for nutrition, but for the economics of our state. And because of the shutdown, for the first time in the history of the program, for the very first time, people are not going to get their benefits on the 1st of November. And that's going to be very detrimental, not just to them, to the 800,000 people in our state who are SNAP participants, but also to our economy. It's going to impact our grocery stores, our farmers markets, all the retailers, and it's just going to be very detrimental. It's going to be a very challenging time for folks.
So this is the 28th day of the shutdown. And I thought that I had read that New Jersey would be able to carry on and support families on the nutritional program for the month of November, but if it went beyond that, that would be the end of it. Are you saying now that it's really going to stop in less than a week?
That's correct. USDA advised us last month not to send the November files forward, so that we could not guarantee that people would have the November benefits. The way the program works is we administer the program, we figure out who's eligible, who's not, what the size of their benefit is, but all of the funding, almost all of the funding comes from the federal government.
Yeah.
And when USDA says do not send the files, because there will be no November benefits, that means there are no November SNAP benefits.
So I understand that there's at least a $6 billion contingency fund that could support this program for a while at least.
That's correct.
And that hopefully during that period of time, Republicans will come talk to us, in the House of Representatives in particular. But that the administration made a conscious decision that they would not use that contingency money in this emergency, even though $6 billion contingency fund is for the emergencies that come up. Is that true?
So I think we clearly have a difference of opinion. They've decided that this is not an emergency that they would just use SNAP benefits from. From my perspective, this is clearly an emergency. It's an emergency for 800,000 folks in New Jersey. It's an emergency for millions of people all across the country, from West Virginia to the state of Washington. Everybody's going to be impacted. And it is a terrible time to do this. It's never a good time to do this, but it's going to be particularly harsh for us right here at the beginning of November.
So SNAP is income related, right?
That's correct.
So in this state, where we already know that 800,000 people on SNAP would be impacted.
Yes.
If our federal employees are not receiving any salaries, if other folks are not receiving a salary as a result of, the president deciding to not come to the table and have these conversations, does that mean that there's going to be an increase to the number of people who would be eligible for SNAP at a time where you don't even have the capacity to support them?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a very bad mixture of what's going on right now. So SNAP is always dependent on whether you're eligible based on your household size, your household income, your household expenses. And that's how we determine eligibility, whether you're a one-person household or a seven-person household. Your eligibility is depending on that. So with thousands or tens of thousands of federal employees losing their employment, clearly there are going to be more people who are eligible for the program.
But
the eligibility,
what about eligibility? Is that a 1 year thing? How do you?
So the way normally it would work, you would apply if you were found eligible, you would determine what your benefit is, you would get your benefits for between 6 months or for a year. It's longer for folks who are seniors or who are disabled because their job status is likely not to change, but usually for 6 months. And then you'll be set to have your benefits unless there's a change in your circumstance. In this case, people will be able to still sign up, but we can't authorize benefits. The federal government has told us there is no money for benefits. So people will still come and get signed up and they can be authorized, but there will be no benefits because of the challenges that we're facing at the federal level.
Commissioner, you mentioned two groups of people that really kind of struck out at me. One was children and elderly. And so what we're seeing is that for some reason, those people who depend upon SNAP to provide them the groceries that they need in order to eat and to be well, whether they're the children or the parents of the children or the elderly, that this administration doesn't recognize that to go from a number to zero is an emergency.
Right. So there are three categories that make up the majority of SNAP recipients. There are about 342,000 who are kids. There are about 240,000 who are disabled. And then there are about 175,000 who are older. And so that group, those groups make up the majority of SNAP recipients. And what I said before was that if you're disabled or elderly, your employment status is not likely to change. So we give you a longer period of time to get benefits. And technically for children, it won't, depending on your age. But the lack of recognition of the harm that this will cause for hundreds of thousands of folks who can't just go out to the marketplace and get a job is really, really disheartening.
Last week, I went and visited the food bank in another part of my district.
Right.
And this is a huge food bank that delivers food to counties.
Right. Community Food Bank of New Jersey, yes.
Exactly. And they were very concerned that the impact on the shutdown and the policies.
Yes. Yes.
In addition to just the shutdown, on the policies of the administration, that they'd not be able to meet the need. Then, most recently, I heard from someone who was involved with a food pantry and said that for every 9 families that SNAP feeds, they're able to feed 1.
Right.
And so there's just no way that they would be able to handle this shutdown if SNAP is not available.
Right.
If we can't send them to food pantries and we can't get them the groceries that they need through the SNAP program, what are we to do?
That's right. So I think it's the understanding that with 800,000 people getting SNAP in the state of New Jersey, that if all of a sudden they all switched and were visiting pantries and food banks, it would be days at most before those resources would all be gone. And that would be at the beginning of the month. I'm not noting that it's Thanksgiving. That has not,
Oh
that's
my
not
God,
the part
yes.
about this, but people will be without resources because there's no way for the food banks and food pantries to step in and help 800,000 people across the state. There's just no capacity to do that.
You know, I'm glad we're having this opportunity to have this conversation because we are live streaming, and I know this goes beyond the 12th Congressional District.
Right.
I always tell people, please call your legislators, call your federal legislators, call your state, call your county, call your municipality. Everyone needs to know your concerns about being impacted and not being able to take care of the very vital needs of your families. I also tell people that you got family and friends in other states, so-called red states, so-called southern red states. You gotta call them, and you gotta tell them that they've got to call their federal legislators down there too, because it's gonna take a lot of pressure to get my colleagues who are in charge of Congress, happen to be taking their orders from Donald Trump, to come to the table to negotiate what we need to negotiate to be able to take care of our families. And it's not just SNAP, it's even healthcare. And I know that's not your portfolio, we're not gonna talk about it, but the rising cost or even the possibility of not having any healthcare raises costs, diminishes services and opportunities, and makes us even more unhealthy. Another part of your portfolio, you said, is sort of preschool. Is that right?
Childcare.
Childcare. So have you any noticed yet about childcare and what this shutdown is going to mean next month?
So the child care program that we run in New Jersey is mostly state funded. There are some federal
Thank
funds we
God.
get, and we're doing that. I think the challenge we found is that child care is so important, and it is so necessary, and it is so expensive that we really, at this point in New Jersey, have really not been able to keep up with that. Even though we're spending $1 billion a year on child care, we can't continue to expand the program. So as of today, people can't apply and participate. I know how important that is, but unfortunately, the budget hasn't allowed us to continue to increase that. So child care is another issue, because if you don't have child care, you can't really go to work.
And you know, the interesting thing is that when you say something like SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, you don't think of people who are working. But these people work.
Yeah.
There are many of them who work. So now if you take away their child care subsidies as well, then they can't even get to work.
We know that there are lots of people who are working and not earning a living wage. They are not earning a living wage, and therefore, by the same calculation we use all the time, household income, household expenses, household size, people who are working who are eligible for the SNAP program are utilizing it. But I want to touch on your other point, which is that SNAP isn't just about the SNAP participants. We live in a food system, and so it impacts grocery stores and the people who work in grocery stores. It impacts food processors, food distributors, and it impacts farmers.
Farmers.
We're all impacted. So the amount of money for SNAP that we use in a month in New Jersey is between $160 and $175 million. That's the monthly SNAP benefit that we use for everyone. You can't take $170 million out of the budget and not have it impact other folks, whether they're farmers, whether they're retailers, whether they're distributors. The impact is going to be broadly felt.
I'm glad you raised that, because people need to understand the interconnectedness of our economy and how the system works or doesn't work. I know we're going to wrap up. I want to thank you for spending time with me. I wish we could have a conversation about something that's a little bit more uplifting, but I need you to tell me, beyond what I've said to people, call your legislators, call the state, the federal, and everybody else, call your family, call your friends, stand up and, be counted. Is there anything that I need to tell my constituents that they can or should do to access anything in this emergency situation that is, what, 3 days away?
Right.
Or 4 days away?
Right. So I'd say there are a couple of things. First of all, thank you for helping us to share this message. It's the bad news, but people need to know that their SNAP benefits are not going to come in November. If you have October benefits remaining on your card, you can still spend those in October. If you have summer EBT benefits, you should spend them now as quickly as you can, because those are going to be run out at some point. But there are not going to be new federal SNAP benefits in November. And so that is going to be a challenge for hundreds and thousands of our neighbors. So I would echo your call for people to make their voices heard to their elected officials. You know, I can't do that for them, but for them to reach out to all their elected officials so that these policies can be reflective of actually the people who are impacted by it. And the other thing I would say is, you know, I know that charity can't solve all of this, and the food banks can't do all of this, but it's an opportunity, I think, for all of us to dig deep and help each other, because at times like this, we have to turn to each other and for each other.
I'm smiling because I often say, because I believe it, my family raised me on this, to whom much is given, much is required. And my father used to remind me, Bonnie, you think you're rich because I just give you everything that you want, but we're not. But what we have to share. And so just reminding people that you need to dig deeper and give a little bit more, and to help our brothers and sisters and mothers and grandmothers and children to get through this is absolutely the right thing to say to people.
Right.
I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the work you've been doing, because you've been in this space almost your entire career. So thank you for doing God's work.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.